Tonight, a war against Hamas, or a war to destroy Gaza and displace its people. After being accused of war crimes by one of its own former leaders, Israel is put under the spotlight at the UN. The Palestinian ambassador tells the world his people are starving as 4 more people die in a desperate scramble for food at an aid warehouse.
Dozens of children are dying of starvation. It's unbearable. How could anyone?
Israel's Prime Minister claims his primary goal remains to eliminate Hamas and says its latest leader is dead. But will that be enough for Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire? We're live in Jerusalem and Washington on hopes of a breakthrough. Also tonight, in Berlin, there's renewed support for Ukraine as Germany promises to help Kyiv produce long-range weapons to defend itself against Russia. Waging war with water, the move by India that could reignite tensions with its neighbour Pakistan. A French surgeon who raped more than 100 children is given a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. And I speak to the father of Elon Musk about his son's time in the Trump administration and claims of white genocide in South Africa. Good evening. For the second day in a row, there has been a deadly incident at an aid facility in Gaza. 4 people reportedly died when hundreds stormed a warehouse run by the UN's World Food Programme in a desperate search for food. News of the incident emerged as the United Nations Security Council convened to discuss how the world should respond to the humanitarian crisis. Here is the Palestinian ambassador's emotional appeal for help today.
Dozens of children are dying of starvation. The images of mothers embracing their motionless bodies, caressing their hair, talking to them, apologizing to them. It's unbearable. How could anyone tolerate this horror? Excuse me, Mr. President. I have grandchildren. I know what they mean to their families. And to see this situation of the Palestinians without us having hearts to do something is beyond the ability of any normal human being to tolerate.
Also addressing the Security Council was Errol, a trauma surgeon from California who's volunteered in hospitals in Gaza. He shared his assessment of the situation on the ground.
In Gaza, I operated in hospitals without sterility, electricity, or anesthetics. Surgeries took place on crowded and filthy floors. Children died not because their injuries were unsurvivable, but because we lacked blood, antibiotics, and the most basic supplies that are readily available in any large hospital anywhere else in the world. I did not see or treat a single combatant during my 5 weeks in Gaza. My patients were 6-year-olds with shrapnels in their heart and bullets in their brains, and pregnant women whose pelvises had been obliterated and their fetuses cut in 2 while still in the womb. Mothers sheltering in the hospital cooked bread on hot plates in the emergency department during mass casualty events, as we dealt with the rain of fire and death falling around us everywhere.
Well, earlier, the EU's top diplomat said Israel's war efforts had gone beyond what is necessary to fight Hamas. And one former Prime Minister of Israel was even more scathing with his criticism. Ehud Olmert accused his own country of committing war crimes in Gaza. In an opinion piece in the Israeli publication Haaretz, he wrote, "What we are doing in Gaza now is a war of devastation. Indiscriminate, limitless, cruel, and criminal killing of civilians. It's the result of government policy knowingly, evilly, maliciously, irresponsibly dictated. Yes, Israel is committing war crimes. Well, let's speak to our international correspondent now, Alex Rossi, who's in Jerusalem for us tonight. Alex, very strong words from Ehud Olmert there. What reaction, if any, have we had from Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah, extremely strong words. Israel tonight is looking, Gillian, increasingly diplomatically isolated. Think of the context to all of this, of course. This is 600 days now of war. There are people here who will point to a time when Israel used to win its wars in 6 days. But this war has been going on and on and on. And if you listen to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, it's showing no sign of stopping. The background to all of this, of course, is that Israel is heading towards, if it's not already there, according to many countries, pariah status. When you listen to legal scholars, more and more are coming out and saying what's happening in Gaza is genocide. Clearly that word is loaded. It has great legal implications, but the gravity of that word is becoming harder and harder to resist. But on the 600th day of this war, we did hear from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. He was keen to play up the country's achievements. This is what he had to say.
In the last 2 days, we are making a dramatic turn towards the complete dismantling of Hamas. We are taking away their control over food distribution in the Gaza Strip. This is their money machine. This is what builds their terror army. And this is what dismantles their ability to control. We have killed tens of thousands of terrorists. We killed Mohammed Daif, Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, and Mohammed Sinwar.
Well, the complete dismantling of Hamas may be elusive. Yes, the organisation has been decimated. Yes, its leadership has been battered. But there is an insurgency in Gaza. As quickly as Israel kills the fighters, they manage to recruit more. Militarily, its goals, according to analysts, may be impossible to achieve. And when you look at the hostages, it is diplomacy that has freed them in the end, not military action. And inside the country, pressure is growing on Netanyahu to end the war. More protests from hostages' families today who say that if the war doesn't stop, he is sentencing them to a death sentence. They are now calling on him to resign.
Alex, thank you. So what hope, if any, is there of a ceasefire returning to Gaza? Tonight, President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, suggested progress was being made.
I think that we are on the precipice of sending out a new term sheet that hopefully will be delivered later on today. The president is going to review it. And I have some very good feelings about getting to a long-term resolution, temporary ceasefire, and a long-term resolution, a peaceful resolution of that conflict.
Our correspondent Mark Stone is in Washington, D.C. for us tonight. So, Mark, there are positive soundings about any possible future ceasefire.
Yeah, and if you wanted any reminder of just how grim it is in Gaza, beyond the pictures that are broadcast daily, I think it was the words you played at the top of your show from the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations. Riyad Mansour has been in that position for 20 years. He's held that job, and countless times he has pleaded the Palestinian cause in that forum that is the chamber of the UN Security Council. But I think today stood apart from all his other appearances as he spoke in tears, bashing his hand on the desk, apologising for having done so, but describing in such visceral detail how his people are being killed in Gaza. Flames and hunger are devouring the Palestinian children, he said at one point. Those are the facts. And there was a kind of odd split-screen moment because as he was speaking in the chamber, Steve Witkoff was in the Oval Office alongside President Trump, doing the diplomacy, speaking in a very matter-of-fact way. But I think it is clear that behind the scenes, they now feel that they are, again, very, very close to some sort of a breakthrough. There is a man who is not a household name. His name is Dr. Bishara Baba, who was actually a key figure in Donald Trump's re-election, because in Michigan, here in the United States, he was one of many Arab Americans. He's a wealthy businessman in the United States of Palestinian descent, who did a lot of work to try and get Donald Trump elected because he was fed up with Biden. He believed that Trump offered a path to peace in the cause that's close to his heart, and that is Gaza. Now, Dr. Baba has, over the past few weeks, become a key broker in the negotiations between Hamas and Israel. He is speaking to Hamas behind the scenes. He won't talk about it publicly, but he is having some success, and he is credited for having got the hostage Eden Alexander out a few weeks ago without the involvement of the Israelis. He was speaking directly to Hamas, and the result was a hostage was released. Now, what I can tell you is that negotiations are at a critical phase right now, with papers being passed from the Americans and the Israelis on one side to Hamas through Dr. Baba on the other side to try and force through some sort of a deal. Now, from the words that we heard there from Steve Witkoff, they believe that they are pretty close now to a deal there. So let's watch this space over the course of the next few days, I guess, to see whether some agreement can be reached. Of course, what Hamas is saying is they will release all the hostages tomorrow, today, all of them, dead and alive, if the war is brought to a permanent conclusion by Israel. Israel is not at the moment willing to do that. You mentioned Ehud Olmert and what he has been saying, former Israeli Prime Minister. Well, of course, Ehud Barak, another former Israeli Prime Minister, he wrote in the Financial Times over the course of the weekend a similar piece, effectively calling out his own government for what is going on in Gaza right now. So there is huge pressure on Israel. And to give you a sense of that pressure and the pressure in other arenas that the Americans are now putting on Israel, have a listen to this, because Donald Trump was asked today whether or not he had been putting pressure on the Israelis not to strike Iran, because Israel also wants to hit Iran to set back its nuclear ambitions. There's been some rumors that Donald Trump had put pressure on them not to do that because there are delicate negotiations ongoing there. And he admitted that he had done just that. Have a listen to this.
Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment, could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal. And if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
So we know that the Israeli government, extremely right-wing as it is continuing its war in Gaza, wants to strike Iran as well. But we can see there from what Donald Trump has been saying that he is putting effective pressure on the Israelis to hold back on Iran. What we don't know in the arena that is Gaza, the extent to which they can get Israel alongside a deal that Hamas would sign up to, which would bring a pause, a ceasefire, whatever you want to call it. How long have we been talking about this for? But maybe it would bring some pause to the fighting there. We will see. Watch this space.
Mark, thank you. Well, as you heard at the start of the programme, 4 people were killed today when hundreds stormed a UN food warehouse. After this incident, the World Food Programme said an immediate scale-up of food assistance was needed. Let's speak to some of those who've been involved in humanitarian efforts on the ground. Well, I'm joined now by Jolien Veldwijk, the International Country Director for Palestine at the International Humanitarian Project CARE, and the President of Refugees International, Jeremy Konyndyk. Welcome to you both. And first of all, Jolien, if I come to you, your thoughts on the loss of life, 4 people today dying in scrambles to get to aid.
It is incredibly devastating and heartbreaking to see the chaotic scenes, also at the food distributions that we saw yesterday, but also what happened at the warehouse today. People are so desperate because famine is there, and we need to do everything that we can do to get food in.
Jeremy, your thoughts on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This is the new method being deployed, of getting aid to people, or rather people actually going to the aid?
Yeah, well, I think that right there, as you said, is an important distinction. This is not about delivering aid to Palestinians in Gaza where they are. It is about creating some hubs, seemingly to draw the Palestinian population down into southern Gaza. And Prime Minister Netanyahu actually said last week that part of the long-term objective of this plan is to draw people to the south, to create, as he termed it, sterile zones, and then perhaps not to allow them to return. It's very notable none of these distribution hubs are in the northern parts of Gaza, where about half the population is.
The Israeli administration says that the reason for these hubs is that it prevents Hamas from gaining access to the aid. Do you understand that concern, and do you accept that reason?
The Israeli government has been making that claim for really the entirety of the war. They've never provided evidence of it. They've never provided evidence of it to the UN or to the NGO community. And I would think if this was a sincere concern on Israel's part, they would want to talk with the aid groups about the problem and constructively find a solution. That's not what's happening. I think that is an excuse to circumvent the aid community because they do not control the aid community, and the aid community will not cooperate with an agenda of forced displacement within Gaza. David Satterfield, who is a very hard-nosed U.S. diplomat who was President Biden's humanitarian envoy last year, said to CNN yesterday, basically the Israelis have never provided evidence, including in private to the U.S. government, to back up those claims.
Jolien, do you agree with that assertion that the aid community is being circumvented by these new hubs?
Absolutely. We have experience in doing aid distribution in a safe and professional way. The UN and the NGOs, we have a tested and tried method to bring in aid safely. Our trucks are ready, yet they're not getting approval to come in. We are ready to distribute aid where the Palestinians are, where they need us the most, in a safe way.
Why do you believe that you're not gaining the permissions to deliver this aid that's so much needed?
Because we don't want to contribute to forced displacement, and we don't want to contribute to bringing more harm to the people in Gaza.
Your aid workers are obviously working under very difficult conditions with this renewed offensive by Israel on Gaza. What are some of the conditions that they face? What are they going through?
I mean, we have seen more than 400 aid workers and health workers killed since the start of the escalations in October 2023. But also, if I look at my team now, they are hungry as well. And they're one of the privileged groups because they have, they have jobs and they have salaries to pay for food. But now there is no food. And we need to bring it in. I think we see also at our clinic, we still have a primary healthcare clinic where babies, that only weigh 2 kilos arrive at the clinic and they're so malnourished.
And Jeremy, you have some concerns about the aid that's being given from these new hubs, that what's actually in the boxes provided to people.
Yeah, famine response is not just about giving someone a box of food. Famine response is a comprehensive program that involves clean water, healthcare, therapeutic treatment for malnutrition. There are very specialized foods that you want to distribute in a famine situation, particularly for young kids. What's being distributed appears to be a box of dried goods and dried foods. Well, to prepare that and turn that into food, you still need to be able to cook it. The Israelis are not allowing cooking fuel to come in. They have closed down bakeries. You need clean water. They are not allowing clean water supplies to come in. So you can't just give someone a box of dry pasta and call that famine relief.
And Jolien, the criticism is that the most vulnerable are being disadvantaged by having to go to the aid. And as Jeremy is saying, a heavy box to take back home that you then have to prepare the food. People that are malnourished might not have the strength to make that journey.
correct. We saw people walking for miles to reach food aid yesterday. And I think also just the flour that has come in has only been distributed at the bakeries and not at people's houses and not at the people level, only at community kitchens, at bakeries and at hospitals. That is not famine relief. That is just extending the starvation.
Jolien, what needs to happen now?
We need a ceasefire to bring in aid safely. All the aid that is waiting at the borders, waiting in our warehouses, needs to be let in a safe way.
Jeremy, do you believe that famine can be prevented at this stage? What needs to happen now? What needs to be done to prevent famine?
It can absolutely be prevented. This is not something like Somalia where the rains have failed. The obstacle here is political. The obstacle here is that there are thousands upon thousands of trucks, as Jolien said, waiting at the border with food aid, waiting to come in. NGOs and UN organizations desperate to distribute the food to people who are desperate to receive it. And all of that is being blocked by the Israeli government. If those blockages were removed, the famine could be averted. If those blockages remain in place, famine will continue to set in.
Jolien, do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Jolien Veldwijk and Jeremy Konyndyk, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get more now on the chances of a ceasefire. Yalda Hakim and her co-host Richard Engel talked about that on this week's episode of the World Podcast.
So, Richard, obviously the war in Gaza has been going on for 20 months now, and it doesn't seem like any kind of ceasefire is in sight, although there are a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations that perhaps they're getting close. I've been speaking to contacts on both sides, and it's been described to me at the moment as wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking that there'll be some sort of ceasefire.
Correct. Hamas has said has told us that they have agreed to the ceasefire deal that Steve Witkoff, the US Special Envoy, President Trump's Special Envoy, has put forward to them, and that they're waiting for the Israelis to agree to it. But talking to some of the key negotiators, they say to me, not on the cards at present.
You're watching The World with me, Gillian Joseph. Still to come, we'll bring you a report from France, where the worst child abuser in the country's history has been jailed for 20 years.
show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. Now to a shift in policy in Germany, where the Chancellor, Alexander Merz, has promised to help Ukraine produce long-range weapons to defend itself from Russian attacks. It's a move Moscow described as irresponsible and a dangerous trend. Despite that, there is talk tonight of fresh ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine next week. More on that shortly. But first, here's Merz and Volodymyr Zelensky talking earlier in Berlin.
We will continue our military support and even increase it so that Ukraine can continue to defend itself against this Russian aggression, now and in the future. Our defence ministers are going to sign a memorandum of understanding on the procurement of long-range weapon systems produced by Ukraine, so-called long-range fires. There will be no range limits on these. Ukraine will be able to fully defend itself, including against military targets outside its own territory. You can all see what Putin is doing every night. Massive drone attacks. The Russians are using dozens of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and hundreds of drones. In order to protect lives in our cities, we need constant support and air defence. Now we have very important agreements with Germany about air defence. The Germans are constantly supporting us, including with missiles for air defence. I would like to say thanks for that. I would also like to emphasise that this kind of support will make Russian terror meaningless.
Friedrich Merz and Volodymyr Zelensky there. Well, our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is in Berlin for us tonight. And Siobhan, do we have any more detail about Germany's promise of more military support for Ukraine?
Yes, we have a lot more detail, actually. So when this meeting started today in Berlin, there was a huge amount of speculation swirling about whether this would be the day that Friedrich Merz, the new Chancellor, would send Ukraine long-range Taurus missiles. Now, that was not confirmed today. He was asked about it directly. He dodged the question, instead saying that they wouldn't reveal what weapons were being sent. But what they did reveal is that they are giving Ukraine a package worth €5 billion. And part of that package is this ability to produce long-range weapons in Ukraine. And the Germans have said that they believe actually a quantity, quite a big quantity of those weapons could be produced by the end of this year. And the weapons that are produced will include things that the Ukrainians are already trained to use. So in a sense, it means they might be able to use them more quickly than potentially Taurus missiles, which they would have to be trained on. Now, other things they're giving them are more air defences, more support with Starlink and more ammunition. And again, this was Friedrich Merz underlining Germany's ongoing support for Ukraine, saying again what we've heard from the previous Chancellor as well, that they would stand side by side with Ukraine for as long as it takes, saying that they'll support the next sanction package being worked on by the EU, that they're talking to the US about sanctions packages already. So what does this mean in reality? Well, obviously it is a huge boost for Ukraine. And I think it's important to mention we always focus on the US when we talk about Ukraine, and rightly so. But after the US, Germany is the biggest backer in terms of aid to Ukraine. And so it is a big player, and this boost and this sort of underlining of its support is important. The other thing that's key in this is the Kremlin's reaction. And Sergei Lavrov has said that by doing this, Germany is already actively participating in the war. He said that they have built tensions and that he hopes that essentially right-minded politicians step in and, in his words, stop the madness. Now, that type of rhetoric from Russia towards Germany since the war in Ukraine, it isn't new. However, it is a deliberate power play by Russia because they know it's a mind game that works. Here in Germany, it's really important to understand that there's a huge amount of public unease, anxiety around being drawn into a war because of its past and particularly because of its links to the USSR. And the idea of German weapons, for example, being used to shoot Russian targets fills some members of the public here with dread. I was looking at a poll from the last few weeks, and 65% of Germans, when asked, did not support sending Taurus long-range missiles to Ukraine. And so while I don't think that reaction will change the course that Friedrich Merz takes, it might make some of the politicians and certainly some members of the German public extremely nervous.
Siobhan, thank you. To France now, where the worst child abuser in the country's history has been jailed for just 20 years. In total, Joel Lesquarnek raped 111 people and sexually assaulted 188 more. Most of the victims were children, attacked while under the effects of anaesthesia. The sentence was the maximum the judge could impose, but there are now calls for a change in the law, with some feeling the sheer number of victims demands a harsher punishment. Our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, has more.
Hidden from view and ushered into court, the French surgeon found guilty of attacking nearly 300 people, most of them children. The average age of Joel Lesquarnek's victims was just 11. Most were still under the effects of anaesthesia when he assaulted or raped them. Many of the victims were unaware they'd been attacked until confronted with evidence by the police years later. For 25 years, Lesquarnek filled diaries with meticulous details of the abuse he had carried out. Marie, that's not her real name, was just 10 when she was raped by the surgeon. She'd gone to hospital with a burst appendix.
Pour moi, c'est un homme, c'est un prédateur. C'est un prédateur d'enfants.
I think this man is a predator. He's a predator of children. He destroyed my life and destroyed the lives of so many children. And this man's place is in prison, and he needs to stay there. The question is, why wasn't there any action taken? Who was protecting him and why? How can one protect a paedophile and not the children?
Peut-on protéger un pédophile sur le dos des enfants?
Lesquarnek was found guilty of 111 counts of rape and another 188 of sexual assault. 20 years in prison, the maximum sentence he could receive.
20 ans, c'est peu au regard du nombre de victimes que nous avons.
20 years is not a long time, considering the number of victims we have in this trial. It's time for the law to change and for us to maybe have a sentence that's more suited to the exceptional nature of this trial. So that's a regret we have today.
Lesquarnek was arrested at his home in the small town of Jonzac in western France. A neighbour's daughter told her parents that Lesquarnek had molested her. And when police searched his house, they found life-size dolls chained up, hundreds of thousands of indecent images, and the diaries that recorded his abuse. And yet for decades, he had worked at more than a dozen hospitals and clinics across France, mainly in Brittany, abusing children, his youngest victim just a year old. He could have been stopped, but chances were missed. Even when Lesquarnek was convicted of downloading child pornography, following a tip-off from the FBI, he was allowed to return to continue treating children. And for many watching this trial, that leads to uncomfortable questions. Why wasn't this man stopped? Why isn't France more outraged? Will anything change? Adam Parsons, Sky News.
This is The World with me, Gillian Joseph. Next up, why tensions between India and Pakistan could be reignited.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
To tensions between India and Pakistan now. India has been accused of waging war with water following its decision to suspend participation in the Indus Waters Treaty. The move came after the worst fighting between the countries in decades in the wake of a terror attack in Kashmir, which India blamed on Pakistan, a claim vigorously denied by Islamabad. The Indus Waters Treaty was signed in 1960, but has frequently been a cause of tension between the two nuclear-armed neighbours. Well, a broken treaty could lead to agricultural warfare and threaten the fragile ceasefire between nations that have harboured decades of hostility. Our India reporter, Neville Lazarus, has been to Salal Dam, a hydroelectric facility in Jammu and Kashmir. From there, he sent this report.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders. The Indus Water Treaty, which stood wars and skirmishes, is now threatened as India suspends it in retaliation to terror attacks in Kashmir. Pakistan calls it an act of war, which could potentially be the cause of future water conflicts. India cannot stop water from flowing across, but it can hurt Pakistan by not sharing data and tampering with the river's flow. That could significantly affect agriculture, power generation, consumption and floods across the border. Since no country can unilaterally scrap the treaty, India has been demanding a modification considering the needs of its own changing demographics, water requirements, mitigating climate change disasters and cross-border terrorism. In Pakistan, there is concern and uncertainty. Agriculture is its backbone and almost 80% of cultivable land is watered by the Indus network. It is one of the most water-stressed countries globally. Disrupting the rivers will have significant effects on its economy and people. The fraught relationship between the two nuclear-armed neighbors was displayed earlier this month as both countries attacked each other. Bariram had a miraculous escape. He left his home a few minutes before shells destroyed it, killing his cattle. This happened after the ceasefire. We can't sleep as we don't know when the next bomb will fall. Ramiz is not completely out of danger. Shrapnels are lodged in his liver and ribs. Doctors say it's too dangerous to be removed right now. But it's not the physical pain that traumatizes him as much as the loss of his twins, 12-year-old Zoya and Zain. They got caught up in the heavy Pakistani shelling when they tried to escape.
The bombs fell behind them. Zoya was hit at the back of her head. Her ribs were broken and she was bleeding. My brother picked her up and put her in the car, and within seconds she died in his arms. That's why we want peace, because when you stay at the borders, then we know the effects of a real war. Sorry, I can't speak.
For now, the precarious ceasefire between the countries hold. But for many who have paid the highest price, it has come too late. Neville Lazarus, Sky News in Akhnur, Jammu and Kashmir.
The mother of a 4-year-old girl currently receiving life-saving treatment in the United States says she fears her daughter will die if she's deported to Mexico by the Trump administration. Sofia Vargas is suffering from a rare condition called short bowel syndrome. She was allowed into the US under humanitarian parole, but that was cancelled last month, with the family ordered to self-deport. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports from Los Angeles.
Humanitarian parole is for people like Daisy.
Surrounded by TV cameras at a desk made for adults, a gravely ill 4-year-old who Donald Trump wants to deport. Sophia, not her real name, doesn't understand why she's suddenly the centre of attention. She's in the crosshairs of a sweeping and indiscriminate immigration policy. The White House has ordered she leave the country immediately. Sophia's doctors in Los Angeles say if she's deported to Mexico, her home country, she may live only a few more days.
These are people coming to us for protection, and instead we're sending them to die. That's not justice, and it doesn't make us any safer.
Sophia wears a backpack with a feeding tube which keeps her alive, care only available in the US. She was born with short bowel syndrome, a rare and debilitating condition. Under the Biden administration, she and her mother Daisy were granted humanitarian parole, a lifeline to an existence outside hospital.
She's a very social girl. She very much enjoys going out. She's always saying, let's go, let's go. When we go to the supermarket, she always picks things for her hair or stickers or coloring pens.
But in April this year, they received this notice that their humanitarian parole is being revoked. It's time for you to leave the United States, it reads.
How do you feel knowing that the threat of deportation is looming over you?
So much fear, it is very hard, and so much anxiety. My daughter can die. I know it's hard for you to understand, but it is really what will happen if my daughter is not connected to her treatment.
Daisy's lawyer says they've told the Trump administration they believe a mistake has been made.
It seems as if nobody noticed that this child is 4 years old and that she will die without her treatment. And not only have they not responded, but they have continued sending notices to the family.
The Department of Homeland Security say the family's case is still being considered. Sophia is a tiny symbol of the human casualties of unbending and ruthless policy. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Now, Elon Musk is a man constantly in the headlines at the moment. Today it was the failure of his latest SpaceX launch and reports of a rift with President Trump. But who is the man behind the headlines, and what does he want to achieve in this world and beyond? Well, one man who can offer some insight is his father, Errol Musk, and he's joined us in the studio. Good to see you. And we're going to discuss a range of subjects, but first, how are you? Recently made public a cancer diagnosis, prostate cancer diagnosis.
Yes, well, I've had the necessary treatment, and so I'm OK for the time being, you know. Thanks very much.
One of the things you want to do whilst in London is promote early diagnosis, detection of prostate cancer.
You know, yes, I've been on a few shows trying to, you know, illustrate the need for people to be aware that getting tested and going for the new, you know, sort of longevity tests that you can do, you know, where they can even map your DNA and so forth, that's now possible. And of course, many things like that. You should do it. You shouldn't be the old sort of rugged man and say, I don't do those kind of things, you know, or I let my kids do it or my wife, but I'm not going to do it. No, you have to do it as well.
What were your thoughts last week when former US President Joe Biden made public his prostate cancer
Well, you know,
diagnosis?
obviously you feel sorry, you know, that's not very nice. I mean, it's obviously not very nice.
Let's turn to Elon Musk now,
yes.
Your son. First of all, just how close is the relationship? There are varying reports as to whether you get on or not.
No. Many years ago, Elon insisted we come and live me and my second family, come and live in America, and we didn't like it. So after a couple of years, we actually left without anybody agreeing. We simply left America and went back to South Africa, and this really upset my sons terribly, and they said they're never going to talk to us again. It was simple as that. Nothing very exciting. And, you know, I said to my youngest son at the time, are you really serious? He said, yes, 10 years, 10 years. We'll talk to you in 10 years. That was the rift. Okay. So there's no real rift.
Right. So you get on?
No, and there's also no SpaceX failure. No launch of a SpaceX rocket is a failure. Every single one is a test on something new, you know. And there's no rift between Elon and Donald Trump.
Mm. The criticism has been, I know you're saying there's no SpaceX failure, but that Elon Musk has taken his eye off the ball, has been so much busier with his Doge responsibilities that he's neglected
he's got eyes
some of
in the
his
back
other
of his
businesses.
head, you see, so no, that's not true. No, Tesla is 70% up on last year's price, this time last year, 70% up on what it was. So, you know, there's absolutely no problem. Every third car in the US is a Tesla. You know, everybody wants the new Y. I've just come back from the United States. And, you know, it's full self-driving everywhere.
But there have been issues, though. We have seen protests about Teslas, people not wanting to drive them anymore.
No, just a few people whose, you know, for some reason their complaints are taken out of proportion. No, it's really not an issue. You know, the share price is up 70% on what it was this time last year.
So you wouldn't say that Elon has overstretched himself by running
yes,
the government
I do agree that when I heard he was going to do the Doge, and I thought to myself, well, you know, that's really a lot more now, you know, because he has 200,000 employees, but he has a lot of very good CEOs. So, you know, I mean, give him credit for all the things he's done. If he says he can do it, he probably can do it.
How would you describe your son?
My son? He's a very straightforward person. He's not terribly complicated at all. He's not a very good conversationalist. He's not a very good politician at all, you know. Simply, he hasn't got the gift of the gab. you know. And apart from that, he likes the idea of everyone who works for him must be an A student, you know, an absolute A student. And of course, when you work in government, that you can't have that.
Not a very good politician and hasn't got the gift of the gab. You're not selling him for his role in the American administration, are you?
No, it's not that I'm not selling him. It's just that, you know, as I've explained to him as well, you know, politics is a swimming pool that hasn't got a bottom and it hasn't got sides. So it's not like your normal swimming pool that you can swim to the side or swim to the bottom. It has no bottom, it has no sides. No matter which way you go, you're never going to get to the edge.
So was he out of his depth?
Everyone in politics is out of their depth. Every single person, including Churchill and all of the people you can think of in the past. Once they got into that pool, they were all out of their depth. And all they could do is for a moment or two, for a few minutes or whatever you call it, the 15 minutes, keep themselves afloat and seen. But politics is a pool, the human pool that actually has no bottom, has no sides.
And in your estimation, is Donald Trump out of his depth?
Well, as I say, every single person in politics is going to find that no matter what he does, he's never going to get to the sides or find the bottom. It's one of the deepest, it is the deepest pool of human endeavour, you know.
Regarding Elon's time with Doge, which is coming towards an end at the end of this month, 130 days.
Yeah.
In particular, what did you think of the AIDS funding being paused to South Africa? We saw the immediate impact on people's lives there with their treatment being stopped and sometimes, you know, life-threatening treatment that was needed.
A lot of the money that's been coming to the country is not finding its way to where it's intended to be used. So a lot of it's going into the wrong hands before it even reaches the people that need treatment. So South Africa is a troubled country at this point in time, and government departments don't function the way they should. There are many things that are not good in South Africa at this time. And, you know, cutting the aid is really cutting aid to the people that, to a large extent, are responsible for the condition that South Africa is in at the moment.
Let's talk about South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and his visit to the White House last week, where he was confronted with a series of contested claims about the killings of white farmers in South Africa. We've got a clip that we can play of that confrontation in the White House. Let's have a look.
Okay.
And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
No, nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people.
Now, some of the claims made by Donald Trump were demonstrably false. The video footage didn't show graves, as he purported that it had. The printed material that he brought out, the photos, they weren't even in South Africa. They were from the DRC. There's no evidence to show
that's wrong.
that
that's not
there's
true.
a white genocide taking place in South Africa.
No, that's not true at all. No.
Where's the evidence?
No, that's not true at all. The crosses represented every person that had been killed with their name on it, and it was, you know, like a plaque that you sometimes put up for people, so you could call it pseudo graves that were, you know, on the road. No, the numbers of people killed were not what Trump said, 1,000, more like 4,000. So if you had a row of crosses between Bath and Bristol on both sides of the road, like that, representing farmers killed in England, I think people would really look at it that in a different way.
The crosses were symbolic. They weren't.
Yeah,
they weren't
well,
graves.
no, they weren't. They represented. Each one represented somebody who'd been killed.
The figures that you have of white farmers being killed, where do they come from?
Well, we have the statistics. They've been proven over and over.
Well, shall I share some statistics with you? South Africa, I mean, it does have one of the highest murder rates in the world. But according to the South African Police Service, there were 26,232 murders last year.
Yes.
Of these, 44 were killings of people within the farming community, and of those, 8 were farmers. And the Transvaal Agricultural Union, which represents farmers, they've collated figures as well for last year that show 23 white people and 9 black people were killed in farm attacks. And so far this year, the union has recorded 3 white people and 4 black people killed in South African farms.
On the weekend that I just left, 4 couples were killed. 4 men and 4 women were killed on farms on the weekend prior to me coming here. So I'm not sure where you get those numbers.
Well, I've told you where. I mean, these are figures from South African Police Service.
We're aware of 4,000 deaths over the last 30 years. So it's a longer period. But these people have been killed, and it's not a lie, it's the truth. And the thing is that
does it
what
amount
is
to
important,
a white genocide, though?
Well,
is that
this is the
something
thing.
that you believe?
No,
I mean, you
no,
have been
no,
quoted
that is
on
important. That's a good question. You see, a lot of the time, what's happened with our government in the last 30 years is the various government departments have started to not function anymore. So we don't have railways, we don't have an airline, we don't have a functioning Home Affairs, and one of the things we don't have is a functioning police force. So the result is that people in the cities generally have their own police force. You hire, private people to help you because it's a lot of people and you can afford it and share the cost. But out on the farms, there's nothing like that. So a lot of these attacks on farms, I was attacked on a farm with my 6-year-old daughter. A lot of these people who are attacked, it's opportunistic robbery.
We are sadly running out of time, but just to clarify that you are still insisting that there is a white genocide on
No, I
farmers
wouldn't
in
say.
South Africa.
I'd say it's in that direction.
We must leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.